Welcome to Coffee Break with Police Experts. I'm David Griffith, editor of Police Magazine. My guest for this video is Mo Canady, Executive Director of the National Association of School Resource Officers, NASRO. Mo is a retired lieutenant who served with the Hoover, Alabama Police Department, and for the last 12 years of his career, he supervised the School Services Division. Mo, thank you for your time today. Mo, we are seeing some school districts that dropped their SRO programs in 2020 now trying to restore them. We have an officer shortage. Are there enough officers available to staff these positions?
Quite honestly, I'm not sure there are enough candidates available to staff law enforcement positions in general. It clearly is having a trickle-down effect to the SRO ranks. So that becomes problematic as well. Not an easy situation to deal with.
So what should agencies look for when selecting SRO candidates?
Well, certainly we have a position on that. We have recommendations that we've pushed out there over a number of years in terms of the selection process and what that should look like. And there was a point in time where we were having some pretty good success in terms of getting those officers selected. But now that the pool of candidates has kind of dried up, that has become problematic. One of the things that some departments are resorting to, and I see some out there who have a pretty good plan for how to do this appropriately, is to look at recently retired officers who would like to come back in a reserve officer position and work as an SRO, especially in some of the elementary schools. One of the things that we're seeing there is that when departments do this correctly, again, bring back newly retired officers, make sure they're trained, make sure they're the right person for the job. We find some of these veteran officers who really are molding into this position very, very well. So that's one potential solution.
So what kinds of specialized training should SROs receive?
Well, NASRO, for instance, offers a number of different trainings, beginning with our basic SRO course, which is a 40-hour course. And we have different advanced courses. SROs need to have a great deal of knowledge on things like adolescent brain development, things like implicit bias and how that can affect their role in the schools, school law, search and seizure, special education and special needs students, and that all of the dynamics that are there, they need to be familiar with. Adolescent mental health issues, things like behavioral threat assessment and what their role is in that. It's a lot. And with that, we say that an agency should be attempting to provide the best officers that they have to offer.
One of the reasons so many school districts removed SROs in 2020 was the argument that the presence of officers in schools lead to students being arrested for minor offenses that haunt their future. What SRO critics call the school to prison pipeline. How do you respond to that criticism?
First of all, we reject that in general. We don't see that happening on a grand scale. Certainly, there can be some isolated pockets where that's occurring, and many times it would be because, again, we're not following the selection process, not making sure these officers are trained. We're maybe at the foundational level not doing this the right way. But what we see by and large is in this country from 1996 to about 2020, we've seen a 74% decline in juvenile arrests across this country. And, you're trying to square that then with the rise in ranks of school resource officers during that same period of time. Bottom line, we know, and I've done this job myself as an SRO, we know that SROs can be and are a great filter in terms of arrests on a school campus. We know how to manage that situation very well. We understand the other resources that are available to us so that we're not having to arrest students with any consistency on some of these lower level crimes.
What is the role of an SRO in the daily operations of a school?
It really is based on what we refer to as the NASRO SRO triad concept, which means they have a role from a law enforcement standpoint. Certainly, that's who they are. So in that law enforcement role, it also includes the aspects of school safety. So it's a very unique role. It's very much relationship-based policing, if you will. Two other roles I have within that triad. The second would be the role of informal counselor. And we want to make sure informal is in there, because what we're talking about is in the context of officers who have worked on the street or whatever other assignment they've been in. If they're good at their job, they've done some really good informal counseling. So we're helping them to fashion that and to help transition that role into the school environment so that they can be an advocate for students and help students with the difficulties they're going through. And then the third side of that triad is the role of education. We want SROs to be engaged in the educational process, to understand that's why students are there, and to even serve as a guest speaker in the classroom as teachers invite them in.
Regarding that role, here's a quote from Denver Police Chief Ron Thomas about the Denver shootings. He said, the SRO wouldn't have conducted the pat down that led to the discovery of the suspect's gun used during last Wednesday's shooting. If it's not the job of the SRO to pat down someone who's suspected of carrying a firearm on school property, who's going to do it?
Well, I differ with the chief on that issue. In a general concept, I'll say, I think that this situation probably is a little bit complicated because this appears to be a student that they were regularly, daily patting down, that there was probably some level of an IEP, an individual education plan in place, which I have a lot of problems with that. Just, through experience, putting school administrators in the position of searching for weapons, that's not fair to them. I mean, let's get real about that. That's not fair to put a civilian, educator in that position. Law enforcement officers are trained to do that. That's what we do. We're well practiced at doing it. We know how to conduct a search safely, and we know what to do with the weapon when we've located it. There's also a lot of case law across the country in different states. One particular case in New Mexico that's worth pointing to, that clearly in some of these state Supreme Court cases that educators have been given go ahead to bring an SRO, if you will, under that umbrella when they believe that a student has a weapon, and especially that it's a gun.
Well, the big concern here is, okay, you are an unarmed person searching for a weapon on someone. What are you going to do if you find one?
Yeah. I think if nothing else, regardless of what we're looking at, that there almost has to be a common sense application here. I don't want anyone who's not a law enforcement officer or trained military trying to search someone for a weapon. That shouldn't make sense to most of us.
Okay. We have to note that this interview is being conducted on March 27th, 2023, and the story is just now breaking that multiple people, including children and the suspected shooter, were killed today in a Nashville Christian school. But that begs the question, there are no SROs at religious and private schools, are there?
Well, actually, there are. And I'm thinking here in my own community of one particular Catholic school that does indeed have an SRO. I'm not sure exactly how that works between the school and the police department, if it's an off-duty assignment or what that looks like. So I don't have a ton of details on that, but I know that particular school does. And I would imagine that there are private schools throughout the country who have come to grips with this and figured out how they want to handle that level of security and work with their sheriff's office or police department in that regard. I think there's a pretty good path for that with some of these private schools who have done so.
It's been a topic of great interest to me. Last year, agencies nationwide were plagued by swatting calls reporting active shooters at local schools. How can the presence of SROs mitigate the damage from such hoaxes? Agencies don't have the officer staffing to go to all of these different hoaxes, and they're responding to every one of them.
Look, it's plagued us too. I mean, this started late August, early September of this school year. And it's really, quite frankly, a new phenomenon. We've got the bomb threat phenomenon that's been going on for decades. And I think schools have done a pretty good job in agencies of figuring out how to better manage that. This is a whole new deal here, and it's being done with a lot of consistency. It seems to be a pretty sophisticated group or individual that's doing this. And when you think about whether there's an SRO on campus or not, we began to kind of track this and look at the different cases where there was an SRO as compared to not being one. One of the huge advantages you have with an SRO in that situation is you've already got that person boots on the ground on the campus who can diagnose the situation much more quickly. That does two things. That helps us to stop the lights and siren response that's going on, which we all know as law enforcement officers, no matter how safe we are or how careful we are, it's still increasing the level of danger to us and to, quite frankly, motorists who are out on the roadway at the time. Then the second thing that it does, and not necessarily in this order because both are important, the second thing that it does is it allows the school to get out of whatever procedure they're in, lockdown, lockout, an options-based response, whatever it is, to be able to get the school out of that. Because, until that moment, the school is handling this as if it's a real incident. They have to. They don't have a choice. So it really does provide quite a benefit to have the SRO there to help get this situation resolved quickly.
We've talked about the Denver School Board situation. They're reinstating their SRO programs, which were canceled in 2020. And the reason is school shootings. But honestly, can SROs really prevent school shootings? After all, a single officer at a school can't be everywhere at once.
No, but think about it this way. What if we didn't have them there? How much longer of a response are we dealing with now? I mean, we're watching this situation in Nashville unfold, and the last report I heard was that the call came in at 10:13, and the police department had responded and stopped it at 10:27. Now, quite frankly, without an officer on campus, that's a pretty phenomenal response overall. If that holds, if that's really what the timeline is. But I would offer up to people to look at some of the cases over the last few years. Dixon, Illinois, as an example. St. Mary's County, Maryland, as an example. Arapahoe, Colorado, as an example, where SROs, the only SRO on the campus, has heard the gunfire and went toward it and ended it. No telling how many lives they saved. So can they stop it? Yes. They can even, and we're seeing plenty of anecdotal evidence that they can stop it before it occurs. When we look at the averted school violence database that's housed by the National Policing Institute, it's very clear that those relationships are also critically important to be able to receive intelligence and to be able to act on that and likely stop an act of school violence.
Thank you very much, sir. I really appreciate your time today. I know you've got a lot of interviews because of the Nashville situation, so I will let you go.
I've heard my phone buzzing, so I'm sure it's our publicist sending me more. So we'll get caught up to that.
I'd love to chat with you again. Thank you, sir.